Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome again to the mentoring session for Amazon Smbhav Hackathon. Today, we have a very special guest with us. We have Sanya from a product designer from Uber. And we had many questions yesterday about UI and UX of the product which you are developing. I hope you are developing something good. So, for all those questions, we have Sanya today to answer them and take you through a framework, take you through a model which helped Sanya in her own profile and which will help you in the product you're creating right now. Sanya, over to you.
Hey everyone, so super excited to be here, and today I'm going to be sort of talking about what a framework could be and how could we use it, like also constrained in the small time frame for a hackathon. I know that we don't have so much time in this kind of a scenario, so what I'm going to be doing is taking a real life example that I did a few years ago using the same framework and trying to show like how I achieved something within 8 hours, and how could we potentially see that to be helpful in defining the product that we are trying to create through the hackathon. And yeah, I think a quick introduction about me. So I've been with Uber for about 2.5 years now, and I recently moved on to be a design manager for the Bangalore studio here. Super excited about chatting more and answering some of the questions as Prakash was saying that you guys had yesterday. So happy to answer all of them. Should we get started?
Surely.
All right, let me share my screen. Okay, let's see my screen. All right, so today I'm just going to be giving you a brief and basic knowledge about design thinking and how can we use it. Okay, that was my quick introduction, but I'm going to skip it as I already spoke to it. All right, so I'm going to be talking about the double diamond frameworks. I'm hoping that some of you might have heard of it. This is a framework that designers use quite often. So I'm going to be talking about what each of these means. So I just wanted to quickly give you a glance of how this looks like and what it could potentially do, and then let's see how we can actually use it in one of the some real scenarios as well. So when we start designing, the first thing is discovery and research, trying to understand and uncover the problem at hand, and trying to figure out like what happened with the user or what happened at that point. Is there something existing? Can I ask a few questions to the users to understand it better? And this is a diverging phase where we don't want to limit ourselves to sort of constraining and saying that I can't go beyond this, this is limited by this issue, etc. We would want to openly think about that problem space. The next step is to define that problem, and this is a converging phase. By converging phase, I mean that we have like a bunch of say 10 different ideas. Now we need to decide which two we're going to be working on, because most of the times we have that constraint, right? We can't work on everything, and that's the same for even when we are working full sprints to create something, or working on a hackathon for the next few days to sort of create like a MVP for something. So deciding that one or two things that steals the show, and that's something that we should start with. That's what happens here. Once we have defined and decided like, okay, this is the problem that I'm going to be addressing, the next step is to sort of designing on it. And now the time is to put ideas in terms of sketches, wireframes, or mock-ups, or creating final screens. Again, this, if you see, is a diverging phase where you start creating and then you see that these are 10 possible things I can do with this particular idea in mind. And then again, the last step is to converge it and figure out like, okay, this works the best. It could be done through various ways, right? We can sort of test it. We can test it with a few people, creating a prototype and asking them, oh, does it work or not? Or sort of actually releasing it to a small percentage of your audience to check if that makes sense, or releasing it worldwide if we actually think that the data supports it, and then sort of analyzing it. And this is like a loop. It's not like one step and then we are done. But after we have sort of reached this B point, now we have released it. Now the next step for us is to evaluate that how is it going and is it going good. If not, then what are the problem areas? How do we reach from MVP to V1 to V2 to V3s is this particular process. I've also tried to illustrate it and pointing it out in numbers and saying that these are the steps. But I wanted to sort of just introduce this concept to you before I jump into one of the projects that I'm going to be taking you through today. All right, so I'm going to be talking about, say, I had an idea about a smart luggage tracker, and this was something that I did within almost 8 hours. And so this is very relevant. So I thought I could sort of share with you all and potentially help you answer some of the questions that you might have had. It is really important to sort of think about the user, think about the persona, and think about the right problem you're trying to solve, and that really helps you along build the final solution and also sort of sell it, right? As designers, the biggest strengths that we should possess at least is of storytelling. How do we talk about, like, this was something that went wrong and this is how we are making it right? So all these tend to generally help us align to that to achieve the right thing, and then also convey the right thing to the right set of stakeholders who must be involved. So jumping into it, say the objective was to design a feature to help our users track their luggage at the airport. So as I already told, I took about like 8 to 9 hours completing this whole thing. So the approach, as I was telling you earlier, is the double diamond approach. And say the first step being discover. Here we talk about the question of we question the statement that we created. Does this make sense? How is it being solved right now? How do we sort of talk to the users to identify what kind of problems that they might have, and how do we sort of find that idea that it works and it has potential, and also see that what competitors are doing, etc., just to get an understanding of what is already there, right? The next step is to converge the ideas and define. So trying to make sense of all the possibilities that are there in the discovery phase. So we identified 10 things that make sense. Now what matters the most, and which one, most of all, like answering that question, that this is the one that we should act on first, what is feasible. And the goal here is to sort of develop a clear creative brief that sort of frames that question for us from a design point of view or from the product standpoint, that this is the direction we need to take and this is what we are going to be designing for. And the rest two stages are effectively where we start designing and then sort of defining that one flow that makes the maximum sense and that actually goes to the user. So this is majorly what goes behind the scenes for when you're actually looking at your phone screen and going through one flow or one feature. This is all that is happening in the background. There's a bunch of folks sitting, creating, defining, developing, and like going through this entire process again and again to provide the best experience to you all.
So I guess this is one of the most benchmark ways to do things. Like it is one of the most standard way to do things, or this is one of the way to do things. Like I am very intrigued to is it it's one of the models to go with, or it's the model to go with?
I think it's, for me, it has always been the model to go with, and of course there is a lot of scope to introduce different frameworks within this. Like in case I'm defining, how do I define, I can definitely sort of leverage other frameworks to help me out, and I'm going to be talking about one of them as well, jobs to be done. That's one of my favorite as well, of how do you define some of the use cases. And but this is my go-to method, but there are a few others, but the principle always remains the same. It's an iterative process. We try to do some research, try to define what we're going to design, and then in the end actually end up designing and testing and etc. However, the terminologies might vary if you see some other people writing about it.
Okay.
I hope I was able to answer your question.
Yes, you are. So I'm asking you very general questions, which we generally get on our Discord channel. And people who are watching this, say hi, so we can say hi back to you. And just start asking questions. If you have questions, we would address the question in the session itself. So let's get started. Yes, Sanya, you can go ahead.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Feel free to stop me at any time. All right. So moving into the first phase that I was talking about. So discovery, right? So now this was the brief that we started with, or the objective that we started with. Design a feature to help our users track their luggage at the airport. So how are the users doing it currently? How are they finding their luggage? Right now, also they are doing it. So how are they doing it? Are they satisfied with the current solution, or they're not satisfied with the current solution? If yes, then what are the pain points that are there in the existing solutions that we think we can solve for? And what are the jobs that the users want to accomplish by tracking their luggage? And this is just holding that thought. I'm going to be talking about this in just a little later about what do I mean by jobs. And this is one of the frameworks, as I was telling earlier about, that I believe works really well. And I can share some links with you guys later to sort of read more upon it and how do you guys can use it like in everyday lives as well, and not just hackathons for sure. So let's come to the hypothesis that I started with at least. So users want an easy way to sort of track their luggage after reaching their destination. The current system wasn't efficient enough, and the user is uncertain when she will find her bag and ends up waiting at the baggage belt for say several minutes before locating her luggage. And I think this is a common problem that most of us would have felt, that you're standing at looking at that black bag which is not yours, and there are so many of them, so we end up always buying the same colored bag for some reason. So I think this is something I was trying to understand, like what do other users have to say. So obviously, since it was an 8-hour exercise, I couldn't go and talk to the real users at the airport or try it with a set of people. So what I did is just reach out to a few of my friends to understand like what are their pain points and what are the questions that are on their mind, or what are the problems that they face. So these are some of the codes that I wrote from one of like some of the discussions I had. It's such a pain to keep standing and waiting for your bags when you're not even sure when it'll arrive. So many times my bag is the last one to arrive and I keep standing only to know this. So it's very difficult to spot my bag as there are so many of the same color, as I was saying earlier. So these are very challenging, right? And that sometimes it's like 20-30 minutes of looking at everyone else's bag and then actually knowing that, oh, my bag is yet to come. So using all this, I tried to map the existing user journey, right? So the person reaches the airport, they drop the luggage, they board the flight, they reach the other airport where they were going to, and they find their luggage. Wait, like they find the luggage belt at least. They are waiting for their luggage, and the final step is where they pick their luggage and then book like a ride or something to go home, because they don't know when is their luggage gonna arrive, or however they are planning to commute, right? So, on the basis of this, what I tried to do is that create a persona, and personas are based on people who are frequent travelers, and I tried to derive the specific motivations, goals, and frustrations, etc. by the six of my friends I spoke to. I had like 4 5 questions for them, and then I was trying to understand what are their problems and what are the pain points that they face. But majorly, what came across was that this was a problem, and this sort of helps me think from Sonal's point of view here, that what will she do and what are her needs and what are some of the frustrations. So this also helps me define that one use case that or a couple of use cases that I would want to solve for first. So I do recommend doing this. It doesn't have to be this neat. It could be just like a bunch of scribbles that you can go back and later and decide, like when you're actually creating that solution, will Sonal use it? Will it make sense for her, or are you just making it for yourself or the other people in the team? So we just have to sort of, this helps you bring back to that reality check, that okay, I'm designing for this person. This person has these many needs, and let me solve for that. All right, so I'm gonna be moving to research highlights. So effectively, this means is that what stood out for me, and some of these are obviously lacks data because I spoke to like 6 people, so I don't know. But most of them told me they had to wait like over 10 to 15 minutes to get their bag. and many bags look alike, so it was difficult to find which bag was on your belt, and there was no way to know if someone else picked your bag along the way, right? And that's something we've seen. Like I personally experienced it also, like seeing someone walk with my bag and then not being sure that was it my bag or their bag. So I think all that was something.
This is
Uh,
a really good problem. Nobody thought like this is like mind blown moment for me, because I remember I just fought with a person few months back because I just thought that was my bag, and there was a dent on my bag, and the bag had the same dent kind of thing on the same bag. I was like, I fought with the guy. So yes, this rings many bells.
Yeah, and I think it is most of us would have sort of faced this at some of the other points. I was just again highlighting on the fact these help us to relate to it better. So even if you know it, writing it down and just sharing with your team makes a lot of sense. This brings all of you together in it, and then you're bound to the same sort of goals that you're at least trying to reach, right? And you know that what problems are there that you intend to solve. So this is sort of a primary research where you are conducting the research and trying to find information firsthand. The other thing which I would highly recommend for hackathons is also using what exists on the internet, and there's a lot of research done on a lot of things, or at least when you're trying to understand an existing system, it's still fairly easy because say for example, how does the luggage tracking work? I found a lot of information about like how does baggage handling works and what is the entire system, what happens in the background, and what happens sort of to from inside, like the person dropping the luggage to actually picking up. There's a lot going on in the background which we are not aware of, but if I actually wanted to solve for a luggage tracker, that's something I had to think about. And all right, so I think I'll now move on to scenarios. I'll just pause to see if there are any questions that we need to answer.
So there is one from Santigopalan, that what is the basic requirements in UI UI for this hackathon? So I guess this is something which is a generalized question. Sanya, if you could just answer for general hackathons, it's not just for Amazon Smbhav, but for general hackathons, what do you feel is a basic UI UX requirement is?
I think the basic, I think it is really important, and I'm going to talk more about UX than UI. I think just a subtle difference there. I don't want to focus too much on going into visuals and defining that, but defining the problem right and actually sort of solving for that, it makes a lot of difference, and it won't be just to sell that story, but actually to make that story right. So when you're trying to solve a problem, if you haven't sort of went ahead and deeply analyzed the brief or try to talk to any user or actually do some secondary research, define the use case that you're doing, you will be building something for sure, but it will be difficult to relate it back to the problems that you started with, and you don't even know if you're solving for the biggest problem that others have. You might be just solving for something that you think makes sense, that might not scale later. So I know that hackathons are about MVPs, but in the end we want these ideas to be meaningful for others, and we want these ideas to be something that others can use eventually when we get the right amount of funding, we get the right amount of resources, etc. But I would highly recommend like spending time, if even if not too much time, defining those objectives. And then of course, like you have to define like how the user can use it easily, right? You don't have to create like the libraries. There are so many online that you can find. I would highly recommend not going too deep into UI unless you have like a designer on your team. I would say that use some tools. There are Figma libraries available, so I think that's the next question also. I saw any free site to create free UI UX quickly for hackathons or any presentations. I think Figma, if you guys are comfortable using Figma, try it. It's a great tool, and you can download a lot of files which have all these screens pre-made. So there are templates available for Figma, Sketch. These are all designer tools. But apart from that also, I would sorry. I would say that there are I will have to check actually what is easier for the non-design folks, because the engineers and PMs at Uber also use Figma and like Figma to a large extent. So I'm gonna have to answer that back. If I can find some free sites that can help you, there must be, and I can share those with you later.
I guess with my experience in hackathons, I have seen people using Figma a lot. So Figma is the most go-to tool. We have seen as well from Skillenzas and as well. So there are people who use Figma a lot. It's something good.
Yeah. That's great. I think if you're using Figma, then I would highly recommend. There are so many templates that you can download Figma as a library of stuff. And even if you don't get it on Figma, it's easy to sort of get some of these templates from Sketch, which has a larger library, and you can import it like an SVG or something. It will still work. You'll editing might be slightly more difficult, but it still works. So it's a hack that you can do. But there are tons and tons of files already existing, so you don't need to create from scratch that the top bar looks like this or the iPhone frame looks like this. So I think those are already readily available. Awesome. Cool. Let's continue. So talking about scenarios, right? I think most of you would have heard about use cases. What is the problem that we are trying to solve, and then turning them into stories. So effectively, one of the ways of writing one such story is job stories. So effectively, that helps you answer the, or like create the situation based on context and motivation to answer that when and why will the users need to manage something, right? When will the user need this, or why will the user need this? So say for example, in this case, I've also linked for job stories. So I'm gonna share this with Prakash, or if I can share it with you all, I can do that. So this is a great website which sort of illustrates how you can create some job stories. But this is, let me try to see if I can show you the structure. So basically it is something like this. When something happens, like when is basically the scenario, I want to do this so I can this. So it's basically talking about the context, the motivation, that the goal and the intended outcome. But it really helps you question the premise of the problem as well, and also sort of intentionally think about the outcomes that the user might seek for. Say for example, when Sonal reaches San Francisco after her trip, she wants to know where her luggage is, and the way to reach the baggage belt so that she can optimize her time. So her intention for knowing this is to optimize her time, right? And there could be various ways we can think of what all she wants to do in that time, and how could we help her with that. Like we know that now with this statement, I'm clear that if Sonal has to spend 20 minutes, then she might as well say want to go freshen up, or do some other chores, or buy something at the airport, or do something else, whatever she thinks she can do, or plan her trip, right? Something like this, like when Sonal wants to plan her commute from SF airport to her home in Mountain View, she wants to book her Uber ride to the Cal train station so that she can reach home on time. If we can show an approximate amount of time, she can schedule a ride, or she at least have that time to plan with anyone that she's going to meet up later, or tell her husband at home that, okay, I'm going to be late, this is the issue. So this sort of helps you define some of those use cases. So I was trying to write some of the use cases that can help us define the problem a little better and move us towards defining like the solution. So going through all this now, let me go back to this. So now we have sort of discovered, right, like what are the potential things we can do with it. And of course, this is done in a short format. If you do it in a longer format, if you're actually interested in doing this for your projects, then you can spend more time on qualitative information from the users, crystallizing the research outcomes a little better, defining the job stories right, like further detail it out, etc. And cool. So now moving to the define stage, right? Now we have understood that there is this bunch of issues that exist. So now I want to debrief the brief. So design a quick and intuitive way to track luggage at the airport to optimize users' time. Something I was highlighting earlier, because this seems to be the key, that we want them to be able to optimize their time, which enables the user to view the exact location of her luggage, the time of its arrival, time suggestions for booking a cab ride, things to do while she waits for a bag, and helps her find the luggage in case it is misplaced or someone else took it by any chance. So now I would want us to take that one thing that makes the most sense for us and revisit that. Like, this was the job that we wanted the user to do. When Sonal had a long flight, she wants to know the exact time when her luggage will arrive so that she can freshen up before her luggage arrives. She had a long flight, she would want to go to the restroom, wash her face, or do something, and we want to provide that opportunity for her. So right now, Sonal goes to the baggage belt and waits for her luggage to arrive. After collecting her luggage, she goes to the restroom to freshen up and then books a cab ride home. So this is an assumption that we're making, and this, to a lot of extent, is true today because there's no other solution right now. So that's something people are doing right now. And how do we now help her complete the job better? So the feature should allow Sonal to track her bag and know the time of its arrival so that she can do whatever she wants to in that time. And it also helps her. Say, for example, if we are taking the concern of people visiting the restroom, we can help her locate the nearest restroom and on the app in order to optimize her time. So I also went through other job stories, but I'm going to be still sticking to this one and talking about how did we solve for this. So after now we have defined that this is one problem that we're going to be talking about. So moving on to the design state. So now we are going to be doing some explorations. Oh, I just wanted to check in if there are any questions before I jump into that.
No, not till yet.
Awesome. So how can the user easily find her luggage her way to the baggage belt? So in the current system, the user just knows the belt number and is supposed to locate the baggage belt all by herself based on the signage of the airports, and we need to help her find an easy way. As the user switched on her phone after landing, we should send a notification or something informing her about the status of her bag and the approximate time of its arrival. And something I was thinking of was maybe like show a map telling her that, okay, this is the way to track your luggage and this is how you go. This is about 300 meters away and it's 10 minutes walk or something of that sort. And we'll keep letting her know about what is the status and if it is actually unloaded from the flight or not. And this gives her the time to evaluate that what else she wants to do. So the other thing which we could potentially think of would be, how can a user easily locate his or her bag on the conveyor belt at the airport? So when the user is waiting near the baggage belt, the app should prompt the user about the bag arrival and its ETA, as we thought about earlier. And maybe it could also tell that your bag is here. Maybe this is something we can think of, like the user switching between 2D and 3D views. In a case it's 3D, I can actually show you your bag is here, or in case of 2D views, I can have like a location tracker in the bag which can tell me that my bag is on the belt and it's here. May not be this accurate, but something close. But again, we are in that diverging phase, so we are free to explore and think about some of these ideas. So bunch of ideas of seeing how we can sort of show the user to locate the bag and read, like how do we show the recent status, etc. And again, these are all wireframes. These are very basic wireframes created on Sketch, I think. And I've used the existing map things and just adding bare minimum stuff because this is just my exploration phase. And once we actually go to designing, maybe that's the time where you add more details. So just saying that initially a sketch also works. You don't need to go into this fidelity. You can just use a paper to sketch out your ideas and move along with that. So coming back to what we are also trying to explore here is suggest the user to plan their commute to their destination after collecting the luggage. Most of the people would take a cab, at least like in the Bangalore airport is what I've seen. Most of them take a cab to home, and even if you go to SF, they take a cab to the nearest destination and then take the Caltrain, or park their car somewhere nearby, but this usually helps them plan. So in case we want to allow that capability, that hey, you can book an Uber or book a Lyft or book Ola, anything that we can integrate with, we can potentially suggest them options. So this could be, again, like if we consider the use cases of this particular smart luggage tracker, this should be the priority. Like how can you, like, first locating the luggage belt and then going on to the conveyor belt and actually finding your luggage. So these two are the primary use cases. If you are deciding to build an MVP, then we have to go with the first one, that we allow the user to tell the time that it's going to be reaching in 10 minutes and letting them away to the baggage belt. So this is, again, like how do you prioritize could be completely different, but just saying that we have to a lot of times decide that this is the one that makes sense and this is the one that we are going to be doing. But for exploration and what all we can do, these are some of the ideas that I've been exploring. And again, like that, the thing I wanted to emphasize on was that we again have this aspect that in the MVP we can't build everything, but nonetheless it's good to sort of have those ideas handy and see if something or the other thing can plug in with the existing experience to provide that extra delight to the users that you're seeking to. And I think a couple of more explorations around this is like exploring the airport services while waiting for the bag. So we can potentially suggest attractions nearby, navigating, or maybe nearest restroom and telling them about, like, it's 5 minutes away, you can go there. Or you want to divert them towards, like, say if they've taken an international flight, we can send them to duty free or anything that they're looking for. So some explorations in that area, maybe like suggestions, we can do some food shopping suggestions, whatever would be interesting for the user. And how can we help the users locate their bag in case someone else takes it? So if it goes missing during transit, so the app should be able to identify if someone else picked their luggage and ask her for a notification to confirm it, maybe. So seems like someone else picked your bag, because we know that you're not near the conveyor belt, but it could be that you're traveling with someone. We don't want to alert you unnecessarily or create that havoc, so we would want to confirm. And again, these are not solidified ideas. I can certainly think to make them better in definitely in so many ways, but I hope you get the gist of these are the ideas that we can explore, and these are set of things that we can potentially do. And on the basis of this, I try to sort of create like a journey map of what Sonal is going to do, traveling from San Francisco to New York, and she lands in SF International Airport. And she switches on her phone and she gets a notification about the luggage status and when it's going to arrive. So since she has some time at hand, she decides to freshen up, and the app helps her navigate to the restroom. She walks to the belt where her luggage is about to arrive, grabs a seat next to it to relax, and while waiting, the app prompts her to schedule a Uber ride home. Finally, her bag arrives, and the app notifies her to sort of locate the bag, and she picks up her luggage and walks towards the Uber driver, who will be arriving in a few minutes. So I've tried to sort of visually represent what each of these steps could mean and what they could do. And then I tried to create like a final flow, that this is what I wanted to go with. These were the few steps that I wanted to include. I don't want to include like, this is again like where I haven't considered like the MVP scenario. This is something I can build, but when you consider the MVP scenario, we could have just sort of gone into one or two use cases and just solved for those. And I think what I also tried to define was the success matrix. What does it mean? What does success mean? Sort of helpful to define some of these to make sure that the product that you're creating works. Like even for a hackathon, I would recommend just think of like what does success means, and it doesn't have to be this detailed. It could be just one thing that, okay, if people are able to understand this in this way, it makes sense. However you think that metric should be defined, but I would say nonetheless all the participants should sort of think about like what creating this particular feature means to you and what do you want to get out of it, etc. And yeah, I think if I had time, If I had more time, sorry about that. If I had more time, I would have done things more thoroughly, a little bit differently, because that's what I usually do. That's a part of my job. So I think this something I think you guys can relate to. This was done in a very scrappy and like a very small window. So I was hoping to share my story with you all and see if you can leverage something out of it. I'm happy to answer any questions, Prakash, that these guys had yesterday. If you know any, then happy to answer.
Uh, so mostly the questions were around the concept that if we have created an MVP, and mostly the part of that MVP, should they incline towards creating a structure which is more reliant on UI UX, or which is more reliant on the functionalities which are there before? So which part should they weigh in more in their product?
Sorry, I missed your voice for a little bit. Could you repeat the question, please?
Okay, super bad earphones. Yeah. So, so the question is that they should weigh in more part where UI UX is being used, or over the functionality of the product. Because see, there also there is some what UI UX can be used, but also should they should they involve their time into creating a complete new UI UX, or is it fine with what they have done, which is like most elemental to them? So
I think MVPs are most elemental. If like for designing a really good solution, it has to function well. So that's the first step for designing anything that you guys think for even hackathons, I would say. And since it's such limited time, I would want you all to spend more time on thinking the problem, thinking about more about the problem that you're solving, and focusing more on the functionality. And there's so many UI elements that you can use to show that. I don't want you to sort of create a lot of that, but I would highly recommend focusing on the part that when you're building that functionality and not just coding, right, you're actually building that functionality which the user will see, that is already designed in it, that's already UX, like the experience that the user is going to get through your functionality. So I would say not leaning towards the UI too much sounds like a fair idea. That could be the last step that you guys can take on.
thank you, Sanya. The next question is from Ashish Bhilare. What is the best presentation? Presentation with words and pointers, or presentation with animation, pictures and charts?
That's actually a different question, like actually a difficult question, but it depends, right? I think it depends on the kind of people you're presenting to. If you're talking to a data scientist, then it might make sense to have a lot of words and pictures and charts. But I usually prefer, like, for me, the best presentations are where we have minimum amount of words, but we're still able to sort of convey the bigger picture and focus on the right thing. Like if I have to talk about something, I would rather talk about just one or two things in a slide and break it up and make it more cleaner for easy consumption. So I try to make it that way. I'm more heavy on sort of having less words, may not be more pictures or animation, but just less words in general, like only the amount that is required to convey my point. And it also depends, like if I'm presenting, I want it to be lesser words and more visuals of what I've designed. But if I'm not there, I would want enough words to be there to sort of support the hypothesis I had, because a lot of times the screen in itself cannot convey what amount of significant amount of effort that goes into creating it. I hope I was able to answer your question, Ashish.
Yes, Ashish, I hope you got your answer. And I'll give you an insider tip that just look at the panel of judges who are judging and see from what background do they come. Are they a person who goes for words, or you have to give a sense of social engineering to this. So it could be a lot helpful to you.
Yeah, I think, sorry, just one point I wanted to add to that as well was make it more engaging. And like specifically for this hackathon, I would say tell your story a little well, trying to going on about the problem. How did you find it? And again, like we don't, it doesn't have to be as detailed as something I showed, but it could sort of follow a certain process or a certain flow of how did you arrive at that. Because a lot of times it's really really interesting to know what went behind the scenes than to just see what happened like in that one screen or a couple of actions that you do through the product that you created.
We have one more question from Sindhuja. Uh, I'm using Figma. Shall I mention Figma as technology used in the PPT? Uh, I guess that doesn't matter though. It's a designing tool. It's
Yeah.
I guess it's more consistent upon if you're using AWS technologies, which is more important towards if you look through a lens. What the judges will see, what the panel will see, what the mentors will see is basically if you are choosing AWS technology. Though you can still mention it that you have used Figma to either create the wireframe or either to create the roadmap of your product. So if you have used it's something which is harmless. So you can either use it or either not. Anything else, guys? You have the design manager of Uber at your discretion. Like I have so many questions. I'm not the participant actually, but I'm a big like it's basically you coming from a fashion background and then coming into product design. So it's a journey. I really I'll speak to you someday. Like it's beautiful to see your journey through your LinkedIn as well. So big fan of your work.
Yeah.
Guys, like you have such a great resource person at your discretion. I guess try to use it. It's a great opportunity.
Yeah, thanks for reminding. I need to update my LinkedIn. I have been so lazy.
Ashish, we'll get the details out soon. Don't worry, we'll get the details out soon. Anything else, guys? I gave you such a nudge to think. I guess if you have any other questions, you can just ask in the Discord channel. Sanya, I would be requesting you to come to our Discord channel, and explanation audio is needed in this round. Sindhuja, please use the Discord channel to ask the question, because there are things we confirm with the Amazon team because these questions are very specific. So we need to confirm it with the Amazon team, and we get back to you. So, Sanya, and we would be really grateful if you come to our Discord channel and if you could just like try mentor a few of the hackathon projects which are going right now. So, we'll be sharing the link with you over the mail. So,
All
it would be
right.
an absolute pleasure to have you over there as well. And thank you so much for coming today. Thank you so much for coming today. Okay, Sindhuja, just reach out to me on Discord. If you don't have the Discord link, I'll share it right now.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. I'll see you on the
Thank you so much,
channel.
Sanya.
Bye.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming in. And thank you so much, the participants, for coming in. I hope you enjoyed today's session. This I have shared a link in the chat section. See you guys in the next session.